Testing. Good afternoon. I'll go ahead and call this regularly scheduled meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Krushat,
Here.
Commissioner Walker,
Here.
Vice Chair Dixon,
Here.
Chair Pahana,
Here.
all present.
Thank you. Announcements. These proceedings may be viewed on demand at the City of 29 Palms website at www.29palms.org. You may also live stream this meeting by going on the city website and clicking on the meeting's agendas link. Public comment. This is a time for the public to address the Planning Commission on issues within the jurisdiction of the commission that are not on this agenda. All comments are to be directed to the chair of the commission and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional and courteous decorum during their comments. There's a time limitation of 3 minutes per person. If you haven't already done so, please fill out the name and address slips and hand them to the Planning Commission Secretary. The Planning Commission is prohibited by Brown Act state law from taking action or discussing at length any items not included on this printed agenda. Public comments on specific agenda items will be deferred until consideration of the item on the agenda. Do we have anybody who wish to speak public comment? Moving on. Commission comments and reports of meetings attended. Mr. Krushat.
I have nothing to report.
Thank you. Mr. Walker?
I attended the last city council meeting and the workshop before the meeting. The workshop was actually fairly interesting with the different organizations kind of giving their proposals for getting some city funding to help them do some good things for the city. And then the city council meeting was always fun as always, so it was an enjoyable evening.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon.
I also attended the city council meeting last Wednesday. A lot of information, but definitely very good and knowledgeable. Other than that, that is it. I will say 29 Palms Little League is still currently doing registration, so please sign up.
Thank you. I have not attended any meetings since our last. We do not have anything from our consent calendar. Items removed, we don't have any. And then we'll go ahead and installation of our new planning commission, swearing in planning commissioners.
And the reappointed.
And the reappointed ones. I don't know if you could get past me.
I can get past you. You're not that.
Stand right here. Facing me. Okay, raise your right hand, and when I say aye, you will state your name and then repeat everything else after me. So I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter. Congratulations. So now, if I have you guys sign in, please. It's on the good people. Yeah, it's even embossed. You did? Oh, by the way. once again.
Yeah, and you sit here.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard.
She has a dentist. Give mine back. It's all right. It's an extra. There you go.
Hello and welcome, and so welcome to your new little seat. We'll kind of like familiarize you as we go along. If you have any questions along the way, we do have our agenda that we'll go by, but welcome and congratulations again on your appointments.
Thank you very much.
Anybody have any other comments before we move forward?
I just want to say that I'm glad to see that Jason and Max are back, because I know they work really hard. And I would say one thing, and this is one thing that I know about this group that I'd like you to know, Eileen, is this is one group that I've seen where people actually, they read their staff reports, they do their homework, they visit the sites, and you can tell by the questions we ask that these commissioners that I've been working with have been very, very committed to this job, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yes, push to talk.
And I'd like to say that I look forward to being part of a group that does exactly the same thing. I look forward to reading, already been reading, and I think on a different note, I really appreciate that I've been allowed into the group, kind of a newcomer, new business mind. I think it's really good for the community. It shows a lot to the community. So thank you all very much.
Yeah, of course. Congratulations. Public hearings, we do have none this evening. Discussion and potential action items. Did anybody have anything? No? All right, moving into our study session, workshop on garage requirement. We'll turn it over to our Community Development Director, Keith Gardner.
Thank you. We have two study sessions tonight. The first is a workshop on garage requirements. This has come up recently at a staff level. And so we're asking for a clarification from the commission. No formal vote, but getting the consensus as to what the commission feels and what the direction they think should be. We have a slight variation in terminology and interpretation depending on which document you look at. So the development code, this excerpt from the development codes comes from the parking requirements table, that reference there. And it says that each single-family dwelling should have 2 spaces per dwelling. The housing element of the general plan, which was recently adopted on page 67, says single-family developments are required to have 2 garage spaces per dwelling unit. Note the development code does not say explicitly garage. Multifamily developments are required to have 1 covered parking space and 1 open parking space per dwelling unit. And again, we're just talking about residential now. We're not getting into commercial or anything else. And in the development code, if you look at what garage is defined as, a garage is a building or parking structure or part thereof used or intended to be used for the parking and storage of vehicles. It's pretty loose. It does not say enclosed structure. It could be an awning. It could be a carport. It could be a traditional garage in our that we typically think of with the rolling garage door, bay doors and all that. But that's where we are. We, as staff, are looking for direction from the commission here. Should we revisit the definition of garage to make it more defined in the more traditional sense? Should all new residential units need to have a quote-unquote garage, depending on how we define it? Do structures converted to residential use need to construct a garage if they don't have one? Do multifamily residential parking spaces need to be contiguous with each other? It doesn't say. Or can the uncovered space be in a driveway? There's some interpretation and looseness and some terminology here that we'd like to get direction from the Planning Commission. And that's it for the staff presentation.
Any questions for staff?
Well, do we have I remember this because I looked at this several years ago when I was looking at a piece of property. And I was looking at a small house, and I was told I had to build a garage. And I said, why, if I have a covered space, is a garage required? Was there a reason why we required the garage? I can understand parking spaces. You want to get cars off the street. You want to have access. You build a single-family dwelling, you want them to have a
Off-street
place where they're
parking,
parking, where they're not on the street and having a covered or a carport. And I know that that's what they had years and years and years ago, we didn't require. Was there a reason why a garage was required, or does anybody really know that?
Hey,
Or from any of your experience, why would they require a garage in single-family dwellings?
It's, I can't answer that.
Okay.
All I can say is it's in the housing element of the general plan.
Okay,
And, and also, it is a carport a garage?
right. Well, okay,
And so now this is getting into what is actually required for either new single-family residences or converted single-family residences, because we've recently we dealt with at a staff level what was it, a vacation cottage that was a smaller unit that was meant to be a short-term rental way back in the day for vacation, and it didn't have a garage, didn't have a carport, but they put awnings on the side of it, and they had some storage buildings that they converted into parking spaces. So this is why this is coming up. So in the future, like you said, Commissioner, in the past, the staff may
Yeah.
have required full construction of garages. So is that the direction we want to go here?
I don't know. I mean, the only other thing I have is a comment, and it's like, in a time when we're trying to, I know people are looking for affordable housing, and one of the ways you get affordable housing is to reduce construction costs. Now, if I'm required to build a garage with a home, that's say a neat home, and that has off-street parking and it's a carport, that kind of gets us to where we want to go. And that's all. That was just a comment. That wasn't a question.
Or to further that, the example in the staff report where you had, what about converted garages or requiring them, when the main focus of California SB 9, they want housing. So it's like, are we going to require those spaces that could be a garage space converted into usable housing for somebody, as,
Then what do we do with the parking?
correct.
If you convert a garage to an accessory dwelling unit, you are not required to replace the garage,
Per state law.
per state law.
So there's that answer.
So
There's that one answer,
if
but
you-
there's others.
But our question is, if you convert your garage to, say, a master bedroom or a game room, do you want that garage, does the commission want that garage to be replaced?
I would say not necessarily.
I mean, covered parking, how do we?
I mean, if you can fit 2 more cars in your front lawn or driveway and they're off the street, if the concern is the street, I would say no. I would not require a garage to be added.
Yeah, but I'd also make that point, most of these houses are from point of a property line to property line, and if they convert, there's no way they're gonna be able to put another garage in there anyways. There's only, 8 feet in between? So, and most of these are pushed up to the curb
And
anyways.
it's setbacks, so you couldn't get
So
it in there.
How do you put these vehicles when you talk about 3 bedrooms and you're supposed to have at least 3 cars or minimum, or a maximum of 3 cars, and now you're covering up a 2-car garage to make it a game room or a bedroom? Obviously, I consider that a concern.
So, okay, I just want to make sure. So you're saying no garage replacement or carport, no covered parking replacement?
This
Well,
is
and-
1 of 5, so how, if we're giving direction to staff, how do you feel about, we're speaking conversion only?
Right now, we're speaking conversion.
Conversion only, how does anybody from the public want to give a comment before we're like deciding anything? Just want to make sure. Okay.
Well, if they're converting, then obviously, hopefully, we have places for them to park. If you look at some of these smaller roads that convert their garage into a dwelling, some of them don't have places to park.
But aren't we already restricted by state law? If they convert their garage.
To an accessory
An
dwelling.
accessory dwelling
Yeah.
unit.
Accessory dwelling, which means its own
Unit.
own
its own
unit.
unit, it becomes its own unit. Okay, then a garage is not required.
Correct.
So now we're only talking.
Yeah, because you're
So-
contributing to the main effort, not,
understand that.
yeah.
Okay.
So flip that, and now it's a fantastic game room, do you have the same feelings about requiring that person to put a covered parking or garage? Yes or no? Or opinion?
I don't want to require a garage being built. I mean, my
No.
feeling is not requiring
Okay.
a garage being built. I'm just calling it, having a carport or off-street parking. I'm building a house, I have to have off-street parking, but that can be a covered parking area or a carport. And it doesn't require me to build a
Microphone.
garage. And it doesn't require me to build a garage, is what I'm looking at.
Well, then, can I just interject?
Sure.
Because that goes to not even the conversion. Because the
understand.
way it's written, single-family residence is not requiring garage is based on rooms or the actual square footage.
I think that's
It
where.
says two
Yeah.
garages are required. So if you don't do it on a conversion, why would you have that?
No, that's what I'm saying. I wouldn't have that requirement.
Yeah.
I
you
So
wouldn't
we would go all
have,
the way back and remove that.
yeah, I would, yes. I would say, I don't want a requirement that you have to have a garage if you're building a single-family dwelling. I mean, that should be an option. Yes, it might help your resale value, but,
Keith, can you go back to the
Yeah,
first
go
page? If you just change single-family developments are required to have 2 garage spaces or covered parking space, that kind of, then you don't have to build that actual garage attached to that building. You can build the covered parking for 2 covered parking spaces.
And it has to, your
Becomes a choice.
preference is it has to be a covered? Like,
Well,
like you
because
want
it's-
some type of, that means parking under
We're
there?
not requiring them to build a garage. They have to have 1 covered parking space per. and
One open and one covered.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, but most of those are like apartments that have
Yeah.
those. No single-family resident I know of
Right.
has a single-car garage and then a covered dwelling after that.
I think if you put the carport in there, though, you may have a problem with the smaller lots, which goes to the original
Right.
discussion you were having. So maybe we need to look at what the size is that has to be required for a garage. I mean, you can't say you have to have a carport if you don't have room to even have the garage.
Well,
So
Well,
would
and
you
You're
just,
getting of your head of your.
And keep in mind too, according to this, a carport is a garage.
Yeah, but I mean, if the thing is, no, I want to get the cars off the street because I want to clear the streets, or I want to have a person have off-street parking, and we're also looking at the aesthetics, how it looks to have that. Well, the aesthetics are gone because right now, I've seen people that will park 2 cars in their garage, 2 on the driveway, and then they have cars in their yard. And there's nothing we can do about that.
Well,
so,
isn't that a code enforcement issue then?
I don't know. Is there a
That
code
should be a
enforcement
code
that says,
enforcement issue then. So I
We
mean, that's
actually have
just,
someone from code
yeah, so
enforcement.
that's
Yeah.
just reinforcing
Is that
the
a-
code.
yeah.
So, yeah, most of the complaints that we do receive is about the parking issue. Because people don't want to look at their neighbor's house and see all the cars parked in the front yard.
Yeah.
So it becomes a code enforcement issue, and then we require them to move them, but they can't also have them all on the street either.
Yeah.
So that would be a problem.
So what is,
Okay.
I don't know. Can I just, what is the rule on how many vehicles you can have on your property?
1 per bedroom.
1 per bedroom. Unless, of course, you live in rural living and then you've got 2.5 acres and you can have as many vehicles as you want.
Well, I don't think it becomes a problem just because it's probably not seen or noticed.
Yeah.
Well, the per bedroom is for vacation home rentals.
Yeah, vacation
Uh,
rentals. It's not.
That's not
It's
for
not- that's
typical,
not for
this
building.
is just strictly
Oh,
for
I thought it was
residential.
for,
No.
No, this is for residential homes.
so if we're getting into SB 9 and they want more affordable housing and you could potentially have 4 units on one property now, we're going to have to address the vehicle situation regardless, because
Well-
it's not going to be this magical fit of, you're going to have multi-families living in .24s, or an acreage or whatever lot, and standard family housing. There's going to be a
Somewhere.
parking issue, and code enforcement's not going to be able to.
Well, okay, so this is what I'm getting to here. Should
Yeah.
single-family residential homes be required, either new or converted, to have covered parking spaces and a garage? Do we need to redefine garage to
I think yes. We
be,
need to
to be an enclosed structure, or or should it stay loose the way it is?
Yes, I would like to give direction to the staff to redefine garage.
Yes.
Okay.
no, I agree with that too, because a
Right.
garage is like a 4-wall
To-
structure with, like you
With
said, a
roof
roll
and a
down
large-
roof, yeah, versus some
Okay,
And-
so
metal
let's
siding.
let's take this one thing at a time then.
Okay.
So the direction of the commission is that the definition of garage needs to be more reflective of the traditional, what we think of as a
Yes.
garage with a rolled up garage,
Yes.
all that stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Could we add a second definition of a covered parking or a parking structure?
Yes, we can do that.
Wait, so I understand. So we were gonna redefine garage just so that we have a garage defined.
Correct.
Whether or not we have a requirement for a garage,
Well, that's a separate
that's
issue.
a separate issue. That's what I wanna clarify.
Yeah.
I want to take these one thing at a
Yeah.
time, because otherwise we kind of,
But if we redefine garage and then covered parking, that covers their parking structure, that covers the single family and then also the multifamily as
okay,
well.
so for the commission's edification, this is straight from the development code online. This is the definition of carport that I have highlighted. This is actually more defined than garage is defined. Okay, so that's the definition of a carport. Okay, and then let me see, do I have,
We have covered parking in there?
I'm looking. I do not see a definition of covered parking, but I will go back to G for garage. And if I need to put this on the same page, I will. A building or parking structure or part thereof used or intended to be used for the parking. So technically speaking, if someone has a big awning on their house, that could be considered a garage.
Right. So I think we need to better
Define.
define
I think so too.
garage, covered parking, and a parking structure.
Okay. Is that the consensus?
Yes.
Let's take this one issue at a time.
Okay.
Yes, and I think, I just want to make a point. I know typically when they talk about garages, the reason that they have this definition is really to give the intent so code enforcement can go in, so it's not being used
Mhm.
for storage of oil, paint, things like that. So
Yeah.
then that eliminates that intent though for code enforcement too.
Okay.
Can you go back real quick to that screen? Because right below it's garage private.
Oh, yeah. Garage private. Then this basically says it's not a,
Oh, like a
It-
garage, like.
like a parking garage, or like a
Like,
parking structure,
yeah.
like a parking structure. And there are such things as private commercial parking lots.
Yeah. I love how if you inflect a little bit, it's different. A garage. Oh, garage. Like we're saying the same word, but yeah. But in our minds, it
Different
reflects
syllables,
to,
right.
yes.
I get it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, different syllables.
Okay, so the commission's desires for us to come back with a definition of garage in the more traditional sense, covered parking, and what else? Carport. We have a definition of carport already.
I think it's just how it's applied to the
And
codes.
that's how it's
yeah.
applied to the code. Okay. That's one.
Okay.
So let's talk about new residential units first. Do all new residential units need to have a, whatever how we define it, or can parking structures be parking spaces be uncovered?
I believe they could be uncovered.
I think that would allow people, if they're gonna build a single-family home, to not have to build that extra space just to park a car. They can build, that space could be used as a bedroom, and they don't have to use it as a place to park a car and put your washing machine.
So what I'm hearing is the emphasis is to get off the street and onto.
Yeah, just off the street.
a garage requirement.
Yeah.
Don't have a garage requirement. Okay?
Not have a garage requirement.
Right, to not have a garage requirement. Okay, do structures converted, I think if the new,
Right.
then the converted is about the same.
Yeah.
Okay. Do multifamily residential parking spaces need to be contiguous? Or can you have one covered and another uncovered on, say, a driveway?
So we're about to build, and we kind of, in that plan, is gonna have covered parking. But it wasn't all,
Well, yeah, so
It
let's
wasn't
just say
all
you have a,
but it wasn't all covered. So it's not, so clearly in approving that, we already made that decision. Subconsciously, I guess,
yeah.
is that it wasn't required that each space have covered.
I think for the multifamily where it already talks about one covered space and one uncovered space, I think.
Per unit.
Per unit.
So the question on that is, does the uncovered spaces, do they need to be separate from the driveway, or can they be part of the driveway?
Part of.
Part of the driveway.
Yeah,
Part-
part of the
okay.
driveway's
I think
fine.
that makes sense.
Okay,
Okay. I think we have direction,
all right.
and we'll come back with
Do you get-
some definitions.
If you have anything, don't
I
feel
just
like you,
think
yeah.
I'm a little, I think it's only because I'm used to reading this type of code
Mm-hmm.
from somewhere else. It's making a point about how many rooms are within the units. So we're saying multifamily residential parking spaces need, well, going,
Sorry, she was reading that.
and I
Okay.
didn't need to, actually, I should have
Well,
probably.
okay, just for reference here, let me bring up what the code actually
Okay.
says for parking here. This is in 1982-50. So 1980.
Well, I can already speak to it because it's not saying, so let's say somebody builds 3-bedroom apartments,
Mm-hmm.
you're only requiring them to have 2 parking areas.
Per
one-
unit.
Per unit,
correct,
per
right?
unit.
No, I understand that, but one unit could have 3 bedrooms.
Right,
So
but it's
that's-
just per the,
The number of bedrooms isn't the,
But in other I'm just making that
Oh, okay,
point.
all right.
They
Oh.
make that concern because they're trying to make sure
okay.
the extra person per that unit on a room that, there are 3 rooms, assume it's 3 drivers. So now you've put 1 out on the street, and if that's the goal to avoid that,
I don't know if we're going to be able to avoid it. So we have to think of a solution. Is the code
for a new
enforcement?
building,
Well,
we
and-
should be able to deal with that, I would think.
So this is how the code reads today. And to your point, I have seen in other jurisdictions where they say it's X amount per
One space
bedroom
per
or,
bedroom.
or,
Yeah.
And then it's fines parking on the street if you can, and you walk a couple blocks to get to your apartment because you weren't given the spaces, right?
Right, but I
More
think
or
those
less.
places that we're all referencing are really dense and they don't have any
Right.
street parking. I mean, I think we're a far cry from a problem like that up here.
But most most companies too also will, like, maybe one company will need open space garage instead of an actual garage, so then they can rent that other garage too.
Right. We're trying to solve like the parking questions.
well, and
Yeah.
this is,
That goes to contiguous though. So let's say they have a lot of land where they're not necessarily assigned. So they could have one covered one at the unit, but they have like a whole lot where it's not assigned necessarily to each unit. So we would require for them during development of how many units to provide that many spots. And then the nice part to them is those could be the uncovered spots. So they're saving on that kind of building, but they still have to, I mean, I know we want to have people come and build, of course, but at the same time, they have to be building up to some kind of standard we set.
I think they call those the volunteer or the like visitor parking.
Right.
Like when you have
Yeah.
family coming up, they
You
can
know-
go to that spots because a lot of apartments that have those multifamilies have one spot and then a garage, and then now a family comes up.
you know, we can certainly look at other jurisdictions to see how they do it and come back with potential recommendations.
But
for
are we
those
saying we
calculations.
wanted, for a multifamily, we want them to have 3 spots per unit?
Well, if they're buying if they're
But-
only building
but-
3 bedrooms in theory,
But if I
right?
build a single-family home with 5 bedrooms, we're only requiring that person to have two parking spaces.
And that was my first thing I said,
Right.
is that weird?
It-
Because I was already looking at the multifamily going, ooh,
multifamily dwellings, we're looking at apartment complexes.
right,
Generally
big
speaking,
money,
right.
big
Yeah.
developers.
Single-family home, I'm assuming one family lives there, even though we know that isn't always the case. Got it. But, and there has to be some standard set, so having 2 spaces per single-family dwelling that's off the street, yeah, that's reasonable. Now we have multifamily, which is Georgia, so I'm building an apartment or several apartments. And getting back to Eileen's question is, do we base that on bedrooms when we deal with multifamily? And then I get back to your question, is you'd like to research that a little more and then come back to us with a recommendation. I like that guidance.
Okay, we can certainly do a little compare and contrast how other jurisdictions do it and come back with a further study session then.
So then I just want to make sure I understand, for single-family residents, code enforcement is currently, what are they guided by? What is the amount?
Well, we're okay with the
Microphone.
vehicles if we're okay with the vehicles if the vehicles are either in the driveway or in the carport or in the garage. Now, the problem comes when people start parking all over their front yard, or
So,
on the setbacks, or on the sides, you know, what they do between the two, you know, your buffer zone between your neighbor. That's when it becomes a problem.
so do we need to define a driveway? Because if they extend their concrete, then you're not gonna be upset that their truck's not in the dirt, it's on a concrete pad.
Yeah.
So,
Enforcement's rules say now about that?
Right.
right.
That's what I wanna know, is what do they say now about?
You can park on your driveway, you can park in your garage, you can't just
You can't
park all
park on
over
your
your,
front lawn, right,
yeah,
okay.
in your front yard.
Okay, so we do have a definition of driveway.
And parking spaces. So if you concreted your entire front lawn, there's your driveway.
Yeah, but I know you guys have a requirement as far as how much you can cover as well.
Well, just based off setbacks, you can get an easement,
We'll
and you
be
could,
addressing that at a later time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another issue.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I've got the development code up, in case someone asks me for another definition I didn't think of. Okay.
So then, can I just ask the intent?
Yeah.
We don't want people parking on the, we're trying to avoid creating parking on the street? I just don't know the intent.
You cannot keep people from parking on the street. It's public right of way.
Yeah.
So no, we cannot keep people from parking on the street.
Okay,
We're just
so then
trying to
let me
reduce
follow
the
it.
amount of parking on the street that a person would have to do. If we said you could build a single-family home and you didn't have to have any type of parking structure, then everybody's gonna be parking on the street. Requiring a single-family home with some parking, I would assume, helps the issue of,
Which is where I'm going to code enforcement. So if you're giving them a ticket, then you're basically just saying, warning, park on the street.
We don't target them on the street.
No, in their drive area, like you, not the driveway, not a parking space. So,
on their front.
not the pretty part. Do you give them a warning and say,
Yes.
move some of these vehicles,
Yes.
the content is,
Yeah.
some of these vehicles need to be on the street or in the garage?
Yes.
Okay.
Or parked elsewhere, or.
and this is just to
Neighbor's
prevent
yard.
like safety hazards, correct? That
Safety
you have a way out, that it's more designed versus reactive,
And-
right?
And public nuisance and abandoned vehicles and,
Abandoned vehicles, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
okay, so we'll come back with multifamily at a later time. We'll do a compare and contrast. Again, this is a study session, no formal vote is being requested, so. I
Oh,
think
this
we
is
have-
great discussion, Keith.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right, so we're good on that one. You want to move on to number 3?
Okay.
Workshop on allowable uses in downtown specific plan.
Okay. Excuse me. Okay, so we do have a list of allowable uses in the downtown specific plan. They don't quite jibe terminology wise with those in the development code. And to that, and I'll show you what I mean here. Here is the downtown specific plan. The format is roughly the same in the sense that you use some of the same terminology. You have 4 zones in the downtown: downtown general, downtown traditional, downtown multifamily, downtown residential. X is, expressly prohibited. P is permitted as long as you have an existing structure. That's something we need to clarify. Administrative use permits and conditional use permits, depending on the zone, depending on the use. Okay. If we do if we look at the development code again, and if we look at, if we compare it to, I just happen to bring up the single family residential zones. There's a lot more listed uses here than in the downtown.
Downtown specific.
And then downtown specific plan, excuse me. Same thing with commercial. There's a lot more listed uses in the development code than there are in the downtown specific plan. So we did a really rough and dirty compare and contrast between what the downtown specific plan has and what the development code has as far as allowable uses and what kind of permits. We did find some things I think obviously need to be cleaned up. For instance, senior multifamily is listed as a conditional use permit, whereas normal multifamily in the downtown is listed as permitted. We can't do that. It's got to be, because otherwise we have to keep that the same. because otherwise we're discriminating based on age, for instance.
Don't we have to make that as easy as possible for them to build any sort of
Right. So
housing?
there's definitely some cleanup
Yep.
anyway. So the blue, or the blues here are some things I think we just need to just get cleaned up anyhow. But the yellows here are those uses that are listed in the development code but not in the downtown. So in the downtown specific plan. So we as staff are a little bit at a loss as
So-
to whether or not they're allowed or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well-
So I have a quick question in regards to how this was explained to us. Creating a downtown specific plan on page 14, the relationship to the development code. So it says where it's silent, you would just refer back to the development code to remain in force.
Well, and this is where we're having a little bit of an issue, because is it allowed or is it not allowed?
So it would be allowed if it's silent. So if it's not depicted in here, is my interpretation after reading this. So let's discuss what that means to everybody.
Well, to follow Leslie's question, I have a question about, okay, you're right, the development code takes precedence because this is a plan. Development code is what we use to enforce. If you go back over the old areas that we had the downtown and how we had the downtown zoned, and we had the commercial office, commercial general, commercial tourism, commercial neighborhood, and they listed what you can and could not do down there. Although these replaced it, they're not listed in these zones aren't in, unless a change came out to the development code that I didn't see.
Well, and that's a good point, because I
mean, I go
I-
back, I
I'm a
find
big
what it
fan
was
of-
zoned before
yeah.
under the development code, and then I make my decision.
and that's something that in a perfect world, we would put these
Yeah.
zones in the development code as well,
Right,
which hasn't been done yet.
okay,
So this is why I'm thinking that if we put these in the development code, we should have,
yes,
be consistent in terminology and allowable uses and all of that.
it would help.
I'm a big fan of consistency between
Yeah.
documents.
So you're saying that there's differences that we put in specific plan that you would like to be amended or corrected to be consistent with the development code?
That's one thing, yes.
Okay.
There's a couple of different ways to do this. One, you can just defer interpretations to the community development director and say you just make the decision, which
But-
leads to interpretation issues.
Correct. Because, yeah.
Although I appreciate the commission's faith in the community development director, it's
I guess if we made it specific, because downtown really wants specific things.
and there's
And
there's
allowable
certainly
uses.
things, and there could very well be things that are allowed in the development code you don't want to see in the downtown,
Right.
and vice versa.
So help me understand what you want us to,
Well, this is why I'm coming to the Plan
Okay.
Commission direction slide.
Okay,
I jumped ahead of you, I
You
apologize.
did, that's okay. The development code also says in there, if it's not expressly listed, it's not allowed. So now we're getting this, if it's not listed, it is, if it's not listed, it isn't allowed. Okay? So we could put a policy in place that says if it's not expressly listed in the downtown specific plan, it's not, potentially not allowed.
Can we just have it reviewable in front of either us or the city council? Like, if they had this wild
you can get
idea
all
that wasn't
day.
listed anywhere, could they just like present it and then
Come
we
to
could
us for
decide?
a Conditional use permit.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could do something like to that effect as well.
I just feel like if you have,
Or number 3 is bring forth a text amendment to make these consistent with each other.
if you're seeing something a lot and it's something that needs a policy rewrite, then I would say we could help guide and then city council decide that that's what they want to have in their policy. But I feel like if are you struggling with like you're receiving something often, or it's just you got a question, you're like, whoa, these aren't syncing up, right?
I'm trying to get ahead of the game before we come
Yes.
into.
this
before
is
we
my
get into
concern, is
recommendations.
that somebody's gonna look at the downtown specific plan and see the term land use designation, zoning, and say, oh, those are our actual zones for the downtown.
Mhm.
But he goes to a zoning map and he sees commercial, commercial, general, commercial.
Well, if we
And if
were
we
to-
have redesignated the downtown to these designations and they're not in the development code, you're right. I have a concern about that.
So,
So,
I'm
so
sorry.
the zoning map was modified to reflect these zones in the
Okay.
downtown.
But we don't have anything governing them. We don't have
So-
a development code that governs that, because
The
the specific plan is not the
is
governing
part of the
document.
development code. It is specific
Right.
plan number 6. It has replaced the previous
Right,
specific plan.
okay. So
it
we have
is
that,
a part
so-
of the development code. The new zoning designations in the specific plan are on the new zoning map. So they
Okay.
are part of the code.
But my issue is, again, in the development code, somebody's gonna go in there and say, okay, this is your implementation document, the development code. Your downtown specific plan is and I see where you've changed the zoning, but I don't see these. Now, I come in, I'm a developer downtown, I come in, I see DT, DG in the zoning map, I go to the development code, and I don't see any of those designations.
So I hear what you're saying, that
Yeah.
these zones should actually be in the development code as well.
If we're gonna do that, yes. That would be my direction, or that's the way, yeah.
I do have a public comment, if, I'll allow it, and if you guys don't mind, that, before we get on any decisions or
Oh, okay.
anything.
There's no
For-
decisions to be made here. This is just
Right, or
This is
just any
just
further,
guidance and
yeah, any
discussion
further
about this.
guidance given to staff.
So just so everyone's aware, this is our GIS system, and it does indicate the new downtown specific plan zones. So they are reflective. So for instance, this is DT, this is
DT,
downtown.
okay, I got you. Yeah.
So it's there.
Yeah.
So the map you have on your wall is probably out of date.
It is. You know, I got it 3 years ago, so.
Can you just go back to the one where you actually show exactly what's wrong? You know, you did your rows.
Yeah, like this.
That- I think it's your, yeah, it's that one.
And the ones in yellow are unclear.
But they're not unclear in the development code, are they?
Well,
Under the
Or
old
Are
zoning.
they not in it yet?
in the
In the
old
old zoning.
in the prior zoning, they were listed in the downtown specific plan zones. They're not at all.
Yeah.
So if they were listed up in the upper one,
If we were listed in the development code, I
then you
think,
could refer out of here
Yes.
with the
You could go,
ability to change.
you could go right to the development code and see,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, because
I
in
know you're
this,
trying to make it nice, like, oh, here it is.
Well, in the
But maybe that's
specific-
not feasible for some things.
it's just
Well,
something, like, it's
it's a consistency
specific,
issue.
that's
Right.
why it's specific to that area. You're not gonna have all the allowable uses. So and it says in here that if it's, you know, the specific plan provision, will take precedence, but if it's not and it's silent on the topic of like, hey, I'm in downtown, I'm in this zone, I wanna do this, is it allowed? Let me see. It's not, there's silence, there's nothing. Development code, it says that
but
it's
what
allowed
zone
in
do you go
what?
to?
Huh?
What zone do you go to in the development code? These
need-
zones are
Right.
not listed in the development code.
For the development code, we need to update the downtown.
To
Wasn't
put this
that-
into development
Yes.
code.
Wasn't that what Jim was just saying?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so we got that
So,
point.
and I'm gonna also preface this by saying it's not entirely possible to think of every single scenario. For instance,
Right.
the one I always think of is escape rooms.
Yeah.
You know, you're not gonna list escape rooms as an allowable use.
I'm not-
But entertainment, right?
Entertainment could be a
So
thing.
I mean, once you,
entertainment's allowed downtown.
once you've defined all the things that can possibly come up, and you go across and say, okay, do we want that in DT? Is it possible to go back, okay, what was that used to be zoned? Well, that used to be zoned
Yeah, we can do-
commercial tourist.
and that'll be
And it was
part of
allowed
our-
under commercial tourist, why don't we allow it in under,
Specific.
you know, DR8, or, you know?
Yeah, and that'll be part of
Yeah.
our study when we go through this to make recommendations.
Because right now,
to
that's,
put this
if
in
somebody
development
came to me and said, no, I want to build downtown now, you've got to make a decision. I mean, what would
That
happen?
would be frustrating, right?
And
They'd have to,
they go to the development code, and they said, okay, this is, I'm looking at CO or CN or CT, and that's what that place used to be zoned, although it now has this other designation that's not in your development code. What would we do in a case like that?
And that's why we're here.
Okay.
okay, so I'm gonna, let Roger Thomas come up.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. Roger Thomas with the 29 Palms Certified Farmers Market. One of the things we are concerned about with this is part of the entertainment and people doing street vending and things. The 29 Palms Farmers Market has been here now for 7 years. We were voted the #1 farmers market in the state of California. And we are being threatened by 9 non-licensed vendors setting up next to us with no insurance or anything, and the city possibly issuing permits to outside vendors or another entire event to set up next to us. And if this happened, they would simply be there piggybacking off all the time, money, and effort invested by the market to compete with it, dwindling the sales of the individuals in the market, which would dwindle the whole market itself, and it would definitely, it would close. We've seen this in the past in other cities. Most cities protect markets from being allowed, or from issuing any permits from things within so many hundred yards during the market. And also, if they weren't there to piggyback off the market and what it does and invest into it, there are 7 days in a week. They have 6.5 other days they could do things. And the 29 Palms Farmers Market, I've been doing markets since 1997. I have built and created 5 of the top 15 markets in the nation, which is 1/3. I'm very proud of that. And 29 is the most difficult place we have ever worked, and it is my home. And we would like it to be able to stay here. And when you review these, we would like to ask the commission to be able to help protect the market with outside things. And not just that, the liability of having street vendors set up next to us if their canopies blow and hurt someone, which if you've ever seen it, is something you will never forget. And who's going to be enforcing that their insurance is good, that it's accurate, that they didn't miss a payment, or that they brought their weights and set up properly that day? In order to do that, you would have to have an entirely separate event. And then you just have one event piggybacking off the other, and both, or definitely one, would eventually fail. And the farmers market itself could not see any reason in continuing to invest in something that clearly would have no future. And so I would like commission to take that into consideration, please.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Mr. Thomas. Okay, so we have that. We have everything that you got with specific plan.
I think the direction is for us to bring back and put this into development code as an amendment to the development code.
Yes.
Got it.
And then we can go down the list and work through each one.
And then we can work through each one of.
Recommendation. We can't decide, we can only recommend.
And some maybe should be eliminated for downtown,
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
where it doesn't have to be that specific.
You can,
Although the escape room is
you
good,
are,
yeah.
you have new zones here and you have a specific plan.
Right.
So you can set up, completely different uses if you want. You can eliminate standard uses if you want.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think we need to work to get the development code at least.
Consistent.
Talking to the downtown specific plan.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of, like I said, I want these documents to be consistent with one another, just asking for direction to how the commission wants us to do it, so. Understood. Okay.
I have a question just because of what Mr. Thomas brought up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's addressing within here, maybe CUP, some kind of permitting, some kind of designation.
I think his comments are heard and received and understood, but I do not feel that it could, we don't have the decision on if we're gonna allow the permit to be approved for that same day, or if they're having, like, we won't manage that expectation that he has, but it is heard and understood, and the staff has heard that, so we won't be able to completely address that concern by eliminating, well, not on this specific day because there's a farmer's market here. So it's just managing that expectation, you know, with the city and the event space and the scheduling and,
So the commission handles that as opposed to the
Microphone.
council?
Microphone.
As, is a,
There you go.
so the council, I know you,
Mhm.
for commission CUPs, the council, let's just use an example, how much each vendor has to pay to the city, which I have
Yeah.
questions about that.
yeah, so we
So that
hand,
kind of,
yeah, we handle more of
That's
like
council.
code, that's, yeah.
okay,
Council would determine, you know, whether or not they're gonna allow multiple people who sign up for permits to use the same area and,
okay.
you know, or staff, you know, they would amongst themselves, kind of just say like, hey, what's our best business practices going forward? That's not something that we would interpret in a code and try to like give advice to city council, you know?
Our job is more, we have to, okay, once the development code is passed by the elected body, it's our job to make sure it's
Yeah.
followed. If there's a plan that's decided on and voted on, and the council says, we like this downtown-specific plan, we are the implementers.
Got
And
it.
that's why we're trying to get the development code to talk. And as was saying, I don't know if we have an enforcement issue, because, you know, some cases it just may be an enforcement issue. Somebody, I don't see why we would have, if we have unlicensed vendors down there, we gotta get enforcement involved.
And
Yeah,
that, right.
yeah.
And then that decision, that original rule would have come from council.
Yeah, it's a very valid concern, and so bringing it to our attention is kind of like whatever avenue at least it's getting like a step forward of maybe having a solution, or maybe just kind of addressing, hey, here's how that's going to be handled. Maybe it's in favor of what you like, or maybe not, but it's, you know, what'll best benefit everyone in the city at that time, I guess. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Of course, yeah. So, community development director updates?
Yes. I wanted to give the commission, we've had some study sessions already. I want to give the commission an update on where we were with the ones we've brought up in the past. And okay. So 2-story homes, that issue in the city, the city attorneys are looking at this issue. And in particular with regards to how state law impacts it and whether or not, and how it affects our housing element. So, to be continued.
Okay, that's a good update.
Downtown specific plan side streets. I've been discussing this issue with the city engineer, and we're comparing our standards and our general plan to other jurisdictions to come up with what is reasonable on side streets in the downtown. And I hope to come back here in a couple months with a policy change. Downtown wayfinding, there's a lot of players with a lot of ideas here. We've been having some discussions with the National Park about what they would like to see down there, so to be continued. Downtown circulation element for the non-vehicular traffic. The commission's direction was to consider the Parks and Trails Master Plan done by our Parks Department as a governing document. So at some point in the not too distant future, we'll be bringing forth amendments to other documents, the general plan, the downtown plan, to make it consistent with the Trails Master Plan.
The
that Parks
updated
has.
version of
The updated version.
Okay.
Again, trying to make everything consistent.
Yeah, it changes a lot, and sometimes you're like, oh yeah, that one volume, whatever, we got to make sure that one gets the tweaks as well.
It's almost like you have a little bit of an underinflated balloon and you squeeze it and then things come here and you
Yeah.
push this and pops out over
That's
here.
a good analogy.
Yeah. The biggest issue is the vehicular circulation.
Oh, yeah.
We're continuing to study this issue, and it's going to be a while before we bring this back for implementation. So that's the longest term one.
Did we have a time limit that we were trying to meet?
No, according to the downtown specific plan, though the circulation plan, the vehicular circulation, I believe it was supposed to be starting to be enforced by like 2030 or so,
Right, yeah.
which sounds like a long time away, but it really isn't.
Okay,
And so
good.
that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Okay.
One other update I feel like I should let the commission be aware of. The city council is going to revisit the vacation home rental regulations next week. And that will be coming, whatever their decision on their policies will be coming back to the planning commission for study.
We're not gonna have another study, that's the secondary,
You didn't want to do 9 more meetings?
no.
It may call for that depending on
I
what
don't-
direction they're giving.
I do not know what
so
the direction of the city council is going to be.
We'll definitely have nominations again for that committee. Any other comments before?
And I want to give the commission a heads up. We have the next commission on March the 7th will be another study session. 2 issues that have come up recently at the staff level are campground regulations and non-conforming uses regulations in the development code. And we're going to stay away from the downtown for a minute.
What did you say?
Campgrounds.
Camp? I thought you said cap and gowns too. I was
Campgrounds,
like,
I apologize.
I don't think we have any jurisdiction on cap.
campgrounds, I apologize, campgrounds
Okay.
and non-conforming uses. Okay, so that'll be the subject, and then the week after that, we will have some public hearings.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Alrighty. Well, I appreciate it, and welcome to the team, Miss Leslie, and welcome back. Welcome back. And I'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting.